Description: in a future where robots and AI have redefined the very nature of work, one person reflects on the transformation from traditional labor to an age of creativity, exploration, and human-centered roles. As they navigate this new world, they ponder whether society has found freedom, or lost its way. Chapter 1: Ghosts of the Assembly Line. I grew up listening to my grandmother's stories about life before automation. She'd tell me about the factory she worked in, the rumble of machines, the long shifts that seemed endless. Even though the work was tough, she spoke of it with a sense of pride. "We made things with our own hands," she'd say, her eyes bright with memories. I can still hear her voice, that echo of a world that doesn't exist anymore. In those days, work was more than a paycheck, it was a way to belong, to contribute to something bigger. Her world was made of noise and motion, of sweat and calloused hands. By the time I was old enough to understand what a factory was, most of them had been converted into automated plants. Rows of silent, efficient robots took the place of people like her, assembling products faster than human hands ever could. The hum of industry became a whisper, leaving behind these hollow, empty spaces where people once labored. Sometimes I wonder if those factories are haunted, not by spirits, but by a lingering sense of purpose, an identity left behind. Chapter 2: The Death of the Job. The changes happened so quickly. First, it was the factory workers and truck drivers, then the clerks and retail workers, replaced by AI that could handle logistics, customer service, even stock management. My parents were data analysts, a career they thought would be safe, one that robots couldn't do. But it didn't take long before AI programs could sift through data better, faster, more precisely. When I was young, my parents told me to study hard, to get a degree, to secure a job that would give me stability. But by the time I reached adulthood, stability had become an illusion. Traditional jobs were obsolete. The landscape of work had shifted from a terrain of predictable careers to an uncharted ocean. The job itself had died, replaced by projects, gigs, tasks that were unpredictable and transient. People didn't ask, "What do you do?" anymore. Now it was, "What do you create?" or "How do you contribute?" But not everyone could adapt to the shift. Some still clung to the idea of a steady job, a role they could count on. I think that's what led to the rise of the preservationists, people dedicated to keeping human jobs alive, even if it meant creating artificial markets, a sort of retro economy just to give people a place to fit in. Chapter 3: New Worlds to Conquer. When the last of the safe jobs faded away, society had to rethink what work even meant. Freed from survival labor, we were told we'd entered a golden age of human potential, a time to explore passions, contribute through creativity and innovation. For some, it was exactly that. My sister works in the exploratory sciences, mapping new frontiers in deep space and the virtual worlds we build with AI. She laughs when she hears me talk about the past. She thinks we're lucky to have been born into this era. Work isn't about survival anymore, she tells me, her face lit up with excitement. It's about purpose. It's about finding out what we're capable of. She's part of the new generation that doesn't mourn the old ways. They're explorers, creators, forging paths into realms of knowledge and artistry that weren't even imagined a century ago. Their work is a fusion of human intuition and machine precision, a dance between invention and calculation. I envy her. I think she's found her place. But for every person like her, there are a dozen more who feel lost, unneeded in this new landscape. Chapter 4: The Rise of Digital Inequality. The world of work may have changed, but one thing hasn't: inequality. The wealth gap only widened as machines took over. Those who could adapt, who had the resources to learn new skills, found ways to thrive. But for many, there was no path forward. Without traditional jobs, they were left to rely on universal basic income, a government stipend that barely covered basic needs. I've seen it in the lower districts of the city, people who feel like they've been left behind, forgotten by this shiny new world. They're the ones who remember what it was like to have a purpose, even if it was a small one, like my grandmother in her factory. For them, this world of automated prosperity feels more like a prison, where their skills mean nothing and their voices go unheard. There are whispers of discontent, of protests calling for limits on automation. Some want certain industries to be human only, a return to manual labor, farming, handcrafts. They say it's a way to preserve dignity, to rebuild the sense of worth that work once brought. But they're dismissed by most of society, seen as outdated, clinging to a past that will never return. Chapter 5, Life in the New Professions. I eventually found my place in a field that's as close to work as anything in this age. I'm what they call a creative integrator. It's my job to oversee the collaboration between humans and AI in the digital arts. We design and build virtual worlds, sculpting landscapes, crafting narratives. It's more than I ever imagined doing as a child. In many ways, it's a dream, but it's not without its shadows. Working with AI is both exhilarating and humbling. My role is mostly to direct, to give the AI a vision, a framework. They handle the details, the endless calculations and configurations that bring our ideas to life. Sometimes, I worry that I'm just another piece in the machine, a human face for a process that no longer needs one. People like me, we tell ourselves we're different, that we're necessary to bring the human touch to our work. But I know that if I vanished tomorrow, my projects would carry on just fine. My role, my identity, is in a constant tug-of-war between being a creator and an observer. Chapter 6, Reflection on the Future of Purpose. As I look back, I wonder if we've gained freedom or lost something essential. We're no longer shackled to the assembly line, to the daily grind of survival labor. Instead, we're told we're free to explore, to create. But in a world where machines can do nearly everything, the purpose of work has become murky, even fragile. For my grandmother, purpose was in her hands, in the tangible proof of her labor. For my parents, purpose was in knowledge, the satisfaction of solving real problems. For me, purpose is more abstract, a challenge to define, a sense of meaning woven into the unknown, the creative. I like to think we're heading towards something beautiful, a future where our minds are free to explore and imagine without the constraints of labor. But there's a risk that, in trading tradition for innovation, we've left behind a part of ourselves. Perhaps the real challenge of this new era isn't finding work but finding meaning. And maybe, just maybe, we'll learn to look backward as well as forward, to blend what's human with what's possible, creating a world that honors both. Chapter 7, The Dream of the Human-Centered Economy. When AI replaced most of our work, leaders promised a human-centered economy, where each person could pursue passions, where creativity and emotional intelligence would be valued above all. For a while, that idea was thrilling, a world where everyone could be an artist, a philosopher, a creator. We imagined ourselves free, contributing not out of need but out of a desire to shape our society. But the dream didn't unfold as we'd hoped. Many found themselves adrift, unsure of how to contribute. Without traditional roles, some couldn't shake the feeling of aimlessness. Turns out, not everyone can, or wants to, be a creator. The talents that automation elevated to prominence, design, creativity, emotional intuition, were not universal. And so, we began to see divides form, between those who thrived in the new economy and those who still yearned for the structure of ordinary work. Chapter 8, The Unseen Labor of the Digital World. In this new society, work hasn't disappeared so much as it's gone invisible. Maintenance of the systems that keep us all connected, for instance, falls on a new class of workers, technicians, system integrators, mind-link managers, who toil in near isolation. Their jobs aren't celebrated or talked about, but they're essential. These jobs may be fewer than before, but they still require the grit and determination of old. These workers may not be factory operators, but they're like the backbone of an invisible machine. Without them, the entire system we rely on would fall apart. They are, in many ways, the last echoes of the 21st century workforce, a quiet underclass, maintaining a world they will never be credited with building. Chapter 9, The Preservationists, Guardians of Lost Skills. The preservationists are a movement dedicated to keeping human skills alive. They're the ones who still value craftsmanship, manual work, the hands-on roles that machines have replaced. They run community centers teaching the old arts, woodworking, weaving, even agriculture, skills no longer needed but cherished by those who want to preserve human heritage. For the preservationists, these skills are sacred. Automation may be efficient, but it's soulless, one of their slogans goes. I visited one of their centers once, and watching them shape wood, plant seeds, I could see the pride in their faces. Their labor was deliberate, almost meditative. It reminded me of my grandmother and her pride in factory work, her sense of purpose. For the preservationists, this work isn't just a job, it's a way of affirming human worth. Chapter 10, Human-AI Collaboration in the Arts. Art has transformed in ways that the 21st century could never have imagined. Today, creating art isn't about mastering a medium, it's about directing algorithms, working with AI to bring visions to life. My friend Mira is a creative strategist, someone who collaborates with AI on multimedia installations. She says that AI can dream in colors and shapes humans might never think of, that working with it has opened her eyes to new possibilities. Yet even she feels conflicted. Sometimes, she says it's hard to know where her creativity ends and the machine's begins. AI doesn't sleep, doesn't pause, doesn't question itself. Mira wonders if she's just guiding the machine or if the machine is guiding her. Art may be a collaborative effort now, but Mira sometimes misses the simplicity of working alone. Chapter 11, Virtual Architecture and New Realms of Work. One of the biggest shifts has been the emergence of virtual architects, people who design entire worlds for exploration. They aren't creating buildings of steel and glass, but environments of code and data. These realms, accessible through neural links, are used for everything from therapy to education to entertainment. I recently met Tomas, a virtual architect who designs relaxation spaces. His work allows people to escape the pressures of society and immerse themselves in beautiful, peaceful worlds. For him, it's a form of social contribution, one that brings calm in a society that can often feel relentless. As Tomas explained, we may not need to build houses, but people still need places to be. Chapter 12, The New Elite, Curators of Human Experience. With automation handling most production, a new elite class has emerged, curators of experience. These are the people who craft the experiences we consume, choosing which ideas, which stories, and which histories will reach the public. In a world saturated with content, these curators shape our perceptions, our moods, our understanding of society. But this control raises questions of its own. If a handful of people can curate the digital landscapes, deciding what is worth our time, are we not just in another kind of factory? One where our thoughts, our desires, are manufactured. The curators are seen as guides, yes, but they are also gatekeepers. And while they offer us inspiration, they also limit the scope of our imaginations. Chapter 13, The Rise of Existential Therapy. For many, the shift from traditional work has led to a crisis of identity, one that goes beyond income or routine. A new branch of therapy has emerged, existential therapy, focused on helping people cope with purpose, meaning, and identity in a post-work world. The need to find purpose remains, even when the struggle for survival does not. In therapy, people confront their anxieties about obsolescence, wrestle with questions of worth, and redefine their self-image outside the boundaries of productivity. The therapist I met, Jaina, sees it as the work of reconnecting the soul. People arrive to her lost, she says, desperate to find something real in a world of simulations and automated systems. In a way, therapy has become the last refuge of humanity, a place where people can explore who they are beyond work, beyond algorithms. Chapter 14, The Psychological Toll of a Post-Work Society. The promise of a world without work sounded liberating at first. But without the structure of traditional jobs, many have struggled to adapt. Depression and anxiety have surged among those who feel purposeless, their days unanchored by the routines they once had. The universal income provides for basic needs, but it doesn't replace the psychological anchor that work provided. Social roles and identity have grown fragmented. In the absence of roles to ground us, society feels looser, less defined. People wander, searching for a reason to wake up in the morning. Some say it's a new kind of poverty, a poverty of purpose. For every story of someone thriving in their creative pursuits, there's another of someone struggling, lost in a world that no longer needs them. Chapter 15, The Emergence of Underground Work Cultures. Despite the shift to a post-work society, there are underground networks of people who still work in more traditional ways. They farm, craft, repair, labor-intensive tasks that machines would normally handle. These networks operate under the radar, resisting full automation in favor of a simpler, more tangible life. They call themselves the keepers, and their communities are insular, mistrusting of the modern world. For them, work is not a means of survival but a way to retain control, to protect a sense of autonomy that's been lost to most of society. It's an act of rebellion, a refusal to let machines take over every last aspect of life. They might be outcasts, but their conviction is undeniable. They see themselves as guardians of humanity, keeping the old ways alive in a world rushing headlong into the future. Chapter 16, The Philosophy of Work and Being. In this era, there's an ongoing debate about the nature of work itself. Without the necessity of labor, people ask, should work exist at all? Some philosophers argue that humans need challenge, that struggle and effort define us as much as creativity. Others believe that without labor, we can finally devote ourselves to intellectual pursuits, art, and discovery. This debate has divided society. There are those who see this as the pinnacle of progress, a victory for civilization. And then there are those who argue that work gives life structure and meaning, that even in a world free from survival needs, we still need challenges to keep us grounded. Chapter 17, The Economic Divide. In the post-work era, the rise of automation didn't eliminate economic disparity. If anything, it exacerbated it. Those who could adapt, who had skills that aligned with the new economy, rose to the top. But those whose skills became obsolete fell further behind. The universal income provides only a baseline existence, the gap between the wealthy and the rest has grown immense. A digital aristocracy has emerged, a class that doesn't own factories or land but controls data, content, and access to knowledge. They're the ones who hold the keys to the new economy, and they're not eager to share them. Chapter 18, Reflection on Freedom and Purpose. As I watch society evolve, I find myself torn. Part of me is excited by the possibilities of a world without labor, a place where people can explore, create, and grow without the weight of survival. But another part of me worries that we've lost something vital, that in shedding labor, we've also shed purpose. We're still human, after all, still beings in search of meaning. And in a world where work is no longer a necessity, we may have to redefine what purpose means for us as a species. Is it enough to create for the sake of creation, to explore just for exploration's sake? Or do we need something deeper, a challenge that calls to us, something that gives life structure and shape? As I reflect, I don't have an answer. But I know that humanity is standing on the edge of something vast and unknown, a future we're just beginning to understand. Whether it's a paradise of creativity or an alienating void of purposelessness, That's yet to be seen.